This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, Noah Toluki, and on today's episode, we recap the Tigers' opening series against the White Sox and a couple of games that they've had against the Red Sox. A little bit of an up and down start to the season, but I'm going to tell you why I see some promise with this team, both with the bats and on the mound pitching as well. Also, Mel Kiper came out with his latest mock draft this week, and something interesting that he pointed out with the Lions picking at number 2. I'm going to discuss why this player will not be taken by the Lions, and hopefully, they'll go with someone else, and actually like an edge rusher, maybe somebody that I think they need more than any other position in this year's draft. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend out there. I was very, very busy. Oh my gosh, a lot of events here at John Carroll to cover. And so, I'm actually in charge. I'm like the main media contact now for our baseball team. And so I've had to organize a lot of games, who's working what games. Plus, we haven't been able to play at our home field just because of rainy conditions and muddy. And it's not a good situation. So we've had to play quote unquote home games at other fields. So that's made it even more stressful. And so, but I'm doing the best I can, and doing some broadcasting and stat work and all that other stuff for the baseball team now, since I've been in charge the last week or so, the main media contact, if you will. But so I've been hanging in there for sure, and I'm really looking forward to a nice little break, going back to Detroit this weekend, hopefully Saturday, and because I haven't been to Detroit, I haven't been home in a couple months now, because I've just been at John Carroll, busy with so many other things. So it'll be good to see some family and celebrate a good Easter. That's for sure, because I definitely needed to get away just for a couple days before we get back to the grind in the last month of spring sports over here at John Carroll. So that's my little John Carroll Blue Streak update as well. But I want to get to the Tigers now. Tigers 2-3. So far at the time of this recording, and they had a big opening day win over the White Sox, 5-4 at Comerica Park. Good to see. I watched about 6 innings of the game, and it didn't really look promising at the beginning. If down 3-0, the bats could not get going early on, but all of a sudden I go back, check the final score, and I see that the Tigers fought back and won that one, scoring 4 runs in the last 2 innings to walk it off. And Javi Baez came in big. He had the big RBI game winner that was off the wall, and because it went off the wall, and then the right fielder of the White Sox caught it. But by rule, that's a double. So then they were able to overturn that via video replay. And New York got it right, and the Tigers walked it off. It felt kind of awkward a little bit, though, because, usually walk-offs are these big, exciting things, whereas, like, the crowd kind of reacted to the replay. And that was their quick little celebration, and as soon as the Tigers saw the replay, they started going out there and celebrating. But it was a really weird pause to celebrate the walk-off, because usually it's just so spontaneous. But I think at first everyone kind of thought he caught it. But once they saw the replay, it was obvious that it hit off the wall, and so that's how that game ended. But interesting how some of the new rules in baseball, where the umpire actually gets on the microphone, the PA system microphone at the stadium, and makes calls like NFL referees do. Because usually, in the past, they'll just go out there after the video review, and they'll signal whatever the call is, out, safe, all that. But now they have to have a whole thing where they announce to the crowd and the TV audience what's going on. So it's very similar to the NFL rules. And ever since baseball, maybe 5-10 years ago, whenever it was, brought the instant replay to baseball, I thought that was a really good idea, because baseball is just one of those sports that's traditionally kind of lagged behind some of the other sports. Football's had their innovations, basketball, so they've all had been quicker with innovations to their game, whereas baseball, took a little bit longer. Instant replay came around in the NFL in the 90s. They took it away for a couple years and then brought it back, a couple years later after that. Basketball has their system of video replay. MLB was kind of the last sport to have this. But now even more, ways to review through the video monitor. And it was really interesting to see because I'm just not used to seeing that in baseball. I'm just used to seeing what the umpire signals and no voice. But it was interesting to see the umpire announce to the crowd that basically the Tigers had walked it off. So really impressive. I was really happy that the Tigers were able to fight back in that one, and I'm sure it juiced up the opening day crowd. It was good to see a lot of those fans over there as well. Eduardo Rodriguez, 4 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, only 2 strikeouts. Not the best day for him. And, he's going to be the Tiger ace this year. And he's a guy that I talked about in last week's podcast that I think could really, really step up for the Tigers this season. And I think just give him a couple games to get in there and settle in because I still think he's going to have a good season. That's for sure. Another player that really has impressed me so far has really been Austin Meadows. This guy batting .462 to start the season. He's basically had almost a base hit. Yeah, he's had a hit in every single game that he's played in this season. The first 4 games. He had 3 walks, even good patience at the plate. 3 walks at the in the first game against the White Sox. This is what the Tigers need. Now he hasn't showcased his power yet by he hasn't hit a home run yet this season, but give him a couple games, and I think he'll take off for the Tigers. That's for sure, because the Tigers are going to need that. And like I said last week, I think the signing of Austin Meadows signals to the rest of Tiger fans and across the MLB that the Tigers are here to play now. They're not here to sell off their players like they were in the past. They're here, they're buying, they're in a win now attitude. And I think he kind of adds to the scrappiness of this team as well, and how they're able to come back even if they're down in late innings. It was also evident in Monday's win over the Red Sox. Very low scoring game. They won that one 3-1 as Javi Baez hit a 2-run blast in the 8th inning to seal the deal for the Tigers. Also, too, that in that game, Matt Manning. He's a guy that I didn't really talk much about last week in my little Tiger preview, but I think he's a guy that could really step up big for the Tigers. It's obvious that he's not really a strikeout guy. I mean, he only had 2 strikeouts through the 6 innings, but he only allowed 1 hit in the game, and that 1 hit in his 6 innings of work was a J.D. Martinez, former Tiger, solo home run. And no walks either. 2 strikeouts. I think this is the Matt Manning we didn't really see last year. He struggled in his debut, against the Angels. I remember watching that game. I believe it was in July. But this is a guy, he was high up the Tigers prospect system. He's had those 5 years in the vineyards of the minor leagues, really to have his arm mature. And, he's a tall, lanky guy. And I'm really, really hoping that outings like that is what the Tigers get consistently from him, because they're going to definitely need it. With all these young guys, Tarek Skubal, Casey Mize, Manning, those guys were kind of in the same class growing up in the minor leagues together. I think this is the time where their arms start to mature and they really showcase, who they are as Tiger pitchers. So really, really exciting to see that Matt Manning was able to hold that Red Sox lineup just to 1 run. Obviously Tigers need a little bit more than just those 3. They can't consistently rely on this pitching because, as I've mentioned before, this is a young staff. I'm just saying I'm hoping to get more consistency out of this staff. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to have any ups and downs. Like I said, this is still a young staff. So I'm not saying, these guys are going to be all-stars right off the bat, but it might take a little bit of time. But I'm just saying it's going to be more consistent this year than it was last year. You're going to start to see more of those outings like Matt Manning had on Monday. I think that's for sure. A couple of other disappointing losses, too. I mean, they lost 10-1 to the Red Sox on Sunday. Not very good to see Tarek Skubal struggled in his 4 innings, 5 runs allowed, only 3 strikeouts as well. So they're definitely going to need him more, as I mentioned. He's a guy that a lot of people said was even better than Mize in the minor leagues. Mize had struggled with some injuries, but he was a guy that really, emerged kind of from out of nowhere. I believe he was like a 9th or 10th round pick from University of Seattle. So, kind of has that underdog mentality a little bit to him, I think. But a guy that definitely has some talent and I think really could step up big for this Tiger lineup this year. Also, Miguel Cabrera, a little bit of a slow start, no surprise really, but he's got 3 RBIs, no home runs yet, but it's good to see him kind of climbing up the hits board as he reaches 3,000, a huge milestone for any player. So just kind of expect Miguel Cabrera. I don't really expect more than like 250 from him this season. My prediction, I'll say like 15 home runs maybe. And anywhere between 60 and 70 RBIs. That's about all I'm expecting right now from Miggy. I'm expecting some other guys, obviously, to step up as well. And my final point here I want to make is on Spencer Torkelson. And, guys, I've been hearing a lot the last couple days. He's a bust. What has he done yet? Took him 4 or 5 games to finally get his first major league hit. Guys, I have a message for you. Let's not get on this train that Torkelson's a bust. And I'm not saying everyone believes it. I've heard some people say they're already putting the bust label on him. Guys, you have to realize something. I don't care if you're a number 1 overall pick. I don't care if you're a 50th round pick or whatever. It's going to take a little bit of time for some of these guys to adjust to the major leagues. Now, some guys do it better than others. Some guys are instantly right away. You look at the guy for Cleveland, Stephen Kwan, very limited major league experience. This season, he already seems to be, lighting up the bases. Collecting a lot of hits. It seems like he's adjusting a little bit maybe faster than some others. But, a guy like Torkelson, you never know. It might take a little bit of time for him to adjust. He hasn't hit a home run. Just because he hasn't hit a home run in 5 games, first 5 games career, in his career, doesn't mean he's a bust. So let's not put the bust label on him yet. We have to give these guys some time. And I get Detroit fans are upset. They want to see results right away. But I don't care. Like I said, if you're a first overall pick, 50th round pick, it's going to take some time to adjust to the MLB. And, I don't think Torkelson's going to be excused from ups and downs. There's going to be times where he flashes and why he's a number 1 overall pick. There's going to be times where he strikes out and, people are like, why did he do that? That was stupid. But the thing is that he's going to need these at-bats. And he's going to need that experience to mature at the plate. And I think over time, people are going to say, okay, that's why he was the number 1 pick. Give Torkelson time. Do not put the bust label on him yet, just because he hasn't hit a home run and it took him 5 games or whatever to get his first hit. The game on Monday, he didn't even play in because I think that was a good move on AJ Hinch's part, just to let him rest, clear his head, get back into the game. He actually ended up pinch hitting in the game, but still, just give him the day off a little bit, let him relax, clear his head, collect his thoughts. So he can move on, and because the Tigers are definitely going to need him. They're going to need his power that he showcased in the minor leagues. But, minor leagues, very different pitching than it is in the major leagues. So, I think just give him some time, and he's going to adjust. That is for sure. But 2-3 start for the Tigers at the time of this recording. And like I said, I think 80 to 85 wins is a good goal for this team. And but so far it's been a little bit up and down. But if they can win this game today against the Red Sox, they're at this time they're tied 1-1 at the time of the recording right now. Jonathan Scope hit a solo home run, and Enrique Hernandez hit a home run as well. Oh, that's good for my fantasy team. I have Enrique in one of my ESPN leagues. So, and then the Tigers will be on the road against Kansas City for 4 games and come home against the Yankees and the Rockies. The Rockies, an NL team that Tigers don't play a whole lot of NL teams. A lot of interleague play a lot, so it'll be interesting to see how they match up against the Rockies. Also, another note before we move on to the Lions. Looks like Michael Pineda will be back after sitting for an injury to begin the season. He was another one-year acquisition that the Tigers had this offseason. We will see how he does, because definitely going to have to add him to a young rotation. Should add some experience in there as well. Former Minnesota Twin, Michael Pineda. So that'll be really interesting to see. And I have a lot of optimism for this team. Once they get their bats going, I really think they can do some damage. But just give them a little bit of time. I think this team can figure it out. And remember, guys, they have A.J. Hinch as a manager. This guy's a very, very good manager. And this isn't like the Tiger teams of the last couple of years where they have no talent. They have young guys that are eager to play, and I think are really eager to contribute and as well. So expect maybe a little bit of up and downs at the beginning, but like I said, I think this team could hit their stride, by May or June, and really take off from there and get to that 80-85 win threshold, which I think is fair for this team. That is for sure. All right, I want to move on to the Lions before we end the program today. So the Lions, mock draft released by Mel Kiper, and he has a very interesting player at number 2 for the Lions. So first of all, to give it some context, the number 1 overall pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan going to them. And then all of a sudden he has a name that, honestly, I didn't really know of until I saw the mock draft. Sauce Gardner. First name's Ahmad, nickname Sauce. He's a cornerback from Cincinnati, went to Detroit Kings, so he's a local guy. And he was nicknamed Sauce because he liked to dip things in sauce when he was a kid. So, kind of reminds me of that Greedy Williams draft pick from the Browns a couple years ago. How he's got an interesting nickname. Some of these DBs with their nicknames, Sauce. All right, guys. This so I was a little bit intrigued when Mel Kiper had him at 2. Look, I'm not one of those guys that looks at a lot of mock drafts. I'm not. I mean, I look at some time to time just to kind of get an idea of who is available at the Lions spot. Who I think will, like, a lot of times I'll just kind of look at the top 5, see what happens. But mock drafts to me are never, they're not set in stone. I've read stories before of how teams will call certain NFL writers that write draft day, mock drafts. And they'll actually ask these media members, "Hey, can you remove this guy from your mock draft and put someone else in?" Because basically we want to draft that guy and we don't want anyone showing any signs that we're going to draft him. And then all of a sudden, they would change to a different player, and then they would actually take that player that the NFL writer had in their previous mock draft. So this is how that works in the NFL, I think. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but sometimes teams will call up these people and say, "Hey, remove." So I think this is some smokescreen by Mel Kiper. There is no way, in my opinion, no way the Lions go a DB at number 2, especially after taking Jeff Okudah at number 3 back in the 2020 NFL draft. There is no way. You don't take a DB that high unless he is some Hall of Fame player right off the gate. If he's like a Darrelle Revis. If there was a Darrelle Revis in this draft, I wouldn't mind the Lions taking a guy like him. I wouldn't. But he's got to be an impact player right away. Sauce Gardner? He's not Darrelle Revis. I don't care if this guy is 6'3", listed as 6'3" with a 33.5-inch arms. Good size. But is he really like a Darrelle Revis, a Hall of Fame player right off the gate? No. This is a smokescreen all the way. And you know what? Any mock draft that has Malik Willis going at number 2 to the Lions, I think is a smokescreen as well. There's no way the Lions take a quarterback or a DB at number 2. And you know what? People are going to say, well, you've Noah, look at all the previous drafts that the Lions have had. Guys, I don't go off of previous draft history. This is a new regime. I am giving this new regime every chance to get on the right foot. I trust Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell more than I ever did with Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. This is the first time in my fandom as a Lions fan that I've had more trust in the management. I had trust with Jim Caldwell, I did. But it wasn't to the level like it is now because Jim Caldwell never showed any signs of improvement as a coach. Dan Campbell last season showed signs of improvement. Brad Holmes has showed signs of improvement as a general manager, particularly with the DJ Chark deal. 1 year, very cheap, basically a tryout to see if he fits this team and maybe gets a big deal next year. He didn't have to go out like the Jacksonville Jaguars did and sign Christian Kirk to some big deal that I don't think he deserves. I think this regime is different. And I think Sheila Hamp, as she's called now, I think they're willing, to give these guys a long leash. And I think they really trust these guys and how they're going to draft. I do not think the Lions are going to defensive back. I think what's going to happen is, say Hutchinson gets picked number 1 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I still think they're going to go with some sort of edge at number 2, whether it's Thibodeau, even though I'm starting to like Hutchinson a little bit more than Thibodeau now. Is Thibodeau's sliding down a little bit now? But I still think they go with an edge or they trade down if Hutchinson's not there. Personally, I think Hutchinson is the Lions guy, if I were to guess. But obviously, if the Jaguars take him, then that's bad news for the Lions. They have to go with their plan B, basically. So we'll see. It's just these top 5 picks, and especially this late in the draft season. I mean, we're basically 2 weeks away. They're still not really like a clear-cut number 1. There's mock drafts with the tackle from NC State going number 1, Evan Neal, Aiden Hutchinson, Thibodeau. There's just so many different guys that they've had at that number 1, 2 spots. Like in the past, for the last couple months last year, we all knew Trevor Lawrence was going number 1 and probably Zach Wilson number 2. And it's happened with 2012, Andrew Luck, RG3, But that's a little different, I think, because they were quarterbacks, whereas maybe quarterbacks, it's more clear-cut, whereas some of the other positional players, it's not as clear-cut. But it's been a long time, at least that I can remember, that we've had such a debate this late before the draft as to who still is going number 1. Very interesting. It's still a toss-up. I just don't think that a DB in Sauce Gardner is in the Lions' plans, especially at number 2 now. Now, if you want to go DB at 32, second round, whatever, go ahead. But at number 2, nope, not at all. Actually, speaking of the 32nd pick, I've seen reports that Nakobe Dean might be a good fit for the Lions at 32, the linebacker who is a stud at the University of Georgia. And if that's the case, I'm all for it. I think Nakobe Dean is going to be a very, very good NFL pro. And I think that he would fit the Lions really well. Sort of that identity in the middle of the field at linebacker. And, we know who the Lions' middle linebacker is, and they just re-signed him, Alex Anzalone. And I think Alex is a player that, struggles a lot in pass coverage. And as a middle linebacker, you really have to excel in pass coverage, especially in today's league. So I think he got lost in pass coverage a lot I don't think he's the linebacker of the future. I just think maybe he was re-signed just because he knows Aaron Glenn's system. And, he's a leader out there. He's the captain of the defense. So I really think that's what that signing was all about. But having a guy like Nakobe Dean, I think really changes your defense, especially how he could be mentored by Anzalone, especially with his leadership. And I think it would be a good fit for the Lions, especially with this new identity that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are trying to establish. I think he would fit great. So it's gonna be really, really interesting to see. Like I said, it's just everything is just still a toss up as we're 2 weeks away from the draft in Las Vegas, beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, where the NFL draft is going to take place this year. I'm sure so many fans are going to be at that draft too. There was a lot of fans in Cleveland last year. I remember I talked about it last year how I went, but this year in Vegas, I think that's going to attract a lot of fans. That is for sure. Make sure to tune in to all of the other great podcasts on the podcast network: Michigan Podcast, The Fan Report, Doc and Jock, the Classic Podcast, the Wrestling Podcast. So many great podcasts to listen to and keep you informed about Detroit sports. And also John Macroon with his fantastic coverage of the Lions on Sports Illustrated. Go check out his content as well. Some really, really good stuff there, especially covering, being on top of this NFL draft and who's going where. What are the Lions going to do at 2? Trading down, taking an edge rusher, or heck, are they going to go with a corner? That's my last resort. But like I said, I think it's a smoke screen, and I do not think it's going to happen. That is for sure. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. Happy Easter, and make sure to tune in next week, only on Open Mic Night.